This conference will now be recorded.
So today we are going to discuss this talk of October 2017, Management of Adnexal Masses in Pregnancy. This is the talk. Here, each and every line of this talk is important, okay? Because what they have done in this talk is basically adnexal masses are very common in pregnancy, and they have given the differential diagnosis of this adnexal masses, and depending upon the investigation, how to differentiate between these adnexal masses, and finally they have given how to manage this adnexal masses in pregnancy. So each and every line of this talk is important, remember well, because this is not mentioned anywhere in other guidelines. This is the topic which is not discussed anywhere. Okay, so this you should know, this talk you should know in thorough. So prevalence of adnexal masses in pregnancy is 0.19 to 8.8%. And incidence of ovarian malignancy in pregnancy is about 1 in 1,500 to 1 in 32,000. So it is a varied incidence is very much varied. Okay, so prevalence of adnexal masses is common, right? 0.19 to 8.8%, but malignancy is rare. It is 1 in 1,500 to 1 in 30,000, 32,000 pregnancies. So what is the differential diagnosis of this adnexal masses in pregnancy? So first they have divided into benign masses and malignant masses, and masses which are unique to pregnancy. So in benign masses, it is again divided into gynecological related masses and non-gynecological related masses. So gynecological related masses, most common are follicular cyst, corpus luteal cyst, hemorrhagic cyst, then serous cystadenoma, mucinous cystadenoma, dermoid, that is macrocystic teratoma, fibroma, endometrioma, fibroid, tara-ovarian cyst, hydrosalpinx, and tubovarian abscess. So these are the gynecological benign masses. While non-gynecological benign masses are appendicular mass, mesenteric cyst, diverticular mass, pelvic kidney. In case of malignant tumors, this can be borderline malignant tumors, epithelial cancers, germ cell tumors, sex cord cell tumors, mesenchymal tumors, or metastatic masses. And the masses which are unique to pregnancy, these are hyperstimulated ovaries, that is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, hyperreaction luteinalis, theca lutein cyst, luteoma of pregnancy, and ectopic of heterotopic pregnancy. So we will see each one by one each. So regarding corpus luteal cyst, this is the masses which you are more common in early pregnancy, and they spontaneously regress by 8 weeks of pregnancy when the placenta takes over this hormone production function. So till that time, corpus luteum maintains the pregnancy. So they usually regress by 8 weeks. It is important to distinguish this cyst from pathological cyst, because if you remove this corpus luteum, you are going to lose the pregnancy. So it is very important that you should differentiate between this corpus luteal cyst and other masses. So these are highly vascular. These are prone for ovarian accidents like hemorrhage or rupture. So here you can see peripheral ring of vascularity. Okay, so that is ring of fire, which is called as ring of fire. So peripheral ring of vascularity will be noted in corpus luteal cyst. Now follicular cyst. So usually the follicles are follicular size is less than 2 centimeter or 20 millimeter, but failure of involution of these follicles or failure of mature follicle to rupture, it results in follicular cyst. So dimension usually it is about 2.5 to 6 centimeter. They hardly exceed 6 centimeter in diameter. And follicular cysts, they are the most benign cyst. They doesn't require any intervention. So if you identify the cyst, am I audible? Am I
Yes,
audible?
ma'am.
Okay, Shaista, please log out and again log in. So follicular cyst, if you identify it is as a follicular cyst, then best thing is to do conservative management. So it is very important to recognize this cyst as a follicular cyst, because they usually resolve before 16 weeks of gestation. So how you are going to identify this follicular cyst on ultrasound? So it is an anechoic cyst with thin wall without any septations or vegetation. So you can see a unequivocal black colored mass with thin wall without any solid nodules or anything, any separations, any multiloculations. So this is a follicular cyst and they are to be managed conservatively. Then hemorrhagic cyst. So hemorrhagic cysts, these are usually benign, but they have different sonographic appearance, and it is difficult to distinguish from malignant lesion because you can see here they can usually present like in the center solid mass or solid projection, because usually this clot, because of this hemorrhage, the clots gets formed and this clot gives varied appearance to the cyst. So this clot can be confused with solid nodule, but usually when you do color Doppler, there will be no vascularity in case of hemorrhagic cyst. While a malignancy or any solid lesion, they will reveal some vascularity. Okay, blood flow will be there in solid lesions, but in hemorrhagic cyst, there will be no vascularity inside the clot. So usually the presentation of this acute hemorrhagic cyst is sudden abdominal pain, which usually resolves within few days. So when the patient is clinically stable, it has to be managed by conservative management. Now, hyperstimulated ovaries or OHHS. So, incidence of moderate to severe OHHS, it is 3.1 to 8%. This is the again a routinely asked question. So, in severe cases, severe OHHS ovary size may be more than 12 centimeters and it has a high risk of torsion and hemorrhage also. So, usually this OHHS is managed by conservative management and it is a self-limiting disease. How you're going to identify it on the ultrasound? So it is a spoke wheel appearance will be there. So bilateral enlarged ovaries with vascular echogenic stromas surrounded by multiple cysts, which will give it as a spoke wheel appearance. It can be associated with ascites also. Here, cyst drainage should not be done, and surgery is indicated only in women who have adnexal torsion or rupture, because these are the ovaries, these are very difficult to handle surgically. These are highly vascular, they are liable to damage on handling. So surgery is very difficult even in case of torsion or rupture also, because they are very prone for bleeding and again all rupture. So this is the thing where the surgery becomes very difficult. So usually it is managed by conservative management unless their torsion or rupture develops. Then hyperreaction of lutein annulus, it is again, it looks usually similar to that of OHHS, but the here cause here is exaggerated response to routine levels of beta HCG. Okay, in absence of ovulation induction. So here the recognizing factor is there will be no ovulation induction, there will be no stimulation from the gonadotropins, but despite of that, the ovary will usually give this appearance of this hyperstimulation, that is multiple cystic appearance. In this hyperreaction of lutein annulus, maternal visualization occurs in around 14 to 25% of cases. Then another is luteoma of pregnancy. This is a rare and benign tumor. Here, this luteinized stroma cells, they replace the ovarian parenchyma. So basically it is a corpus luteum. So these luteal cells, they replace the total ovarian parenchyma. The cells produce androgens and it causes maternal virilization in 25 to 30%. Now the difference between here that hyperreaction of previous slide, hyperreaction lutein annulus and luteoma, that here whenever there is maternal virilization, female fetus virilization can occur in 50% of cases. So this is the differentiating point. So here you have to be careful. So here 50% risk of virilization of female fetus can occur. On USG, it can be a highly vascular mass, which is usually present as a complex hypoechogenic mass. Okay, so it is usually present as a complex cyst. Now, heterotopic pregnancy, usually it is very rare, but in case of assisted reproductive techniques, it has an incidence of 1 to 2%. Okay, so routinely without any assisted reproduction, the heterotopic pregnancy is very rare. But whenever you use IVF or other assisted reproductive technologies, incidence of heterotopic pregnancy is around 1 to 2%. And whenever you see anything where the ovary is seen separately and adnexal mass is there, so always there should be a high index of suspicion to diagnose this heterotopic pregnancy. Then this is again important. that is macrocystic teratoma or dermoid cyst. So dermoid cysts, these are the most common adnexal masses after 16 weeks of gestation. So before 16 weeks, there will be either follicular cyst or corpus luteal cyst. But after 16 weeks, dermoid cysts are most common adnexal masses. Okay. So less than 6 centimeter dermoid cysts, these are generally asymptomatic. While more than 6 centimeter, they are prone to torsion. Risk of torsion in cysts more than 6 centimeter is around 27%. Okay. Now, usually on ultrasound, they are usually represented as complexes. So whenever you cannot differentiate between the complex mass, it is usually MRI is recommended because you can see the fat content, which is a typical for this mature dermoid cyst. So these dermoid cysts are usually bilateral and characteristic appearance is white ball sign. That is, hair and sebum gives this white ball sign. Now, other thing is malignant germ cell tumors. So whenever you are suspecting any cancer, okay, any malignant mass, so 38% of invasive masses, these are malignant germ cell tumors. Okay, so this is not of all adnexal masses, but all invasive masses or malignant masses, 38% are germ cell tumors. They are presented as solid mass, but may contain anechoic areas because of internal hemorrhage or necrosis. And the most common germ cell tumors are dysgerminomas, and these have a good prognosis. But management depends because you see germ cell tumors, these are managed usually by chemotherapy. But for chemotherapy to give in pregnancy, you have to discuss always with surgery, and chemotherapy is the mainstay of management for germ cell tumors. So for both of the things, you have to discuss it with the gynecological MDT, cancer oncological MDT, and then you have to decide because this pregnancy, whether this chemotherapy is safe in pregnancy and not, all this you have to be discussed in the multidisciplinary team meeting. Then borderline or low malignant potential tumors. So these are the usually cystic lesions with malignant cytological features. But what is the differentiating point between borderline tumor and malignant tumor is absence of invasion. Okay, so there will be no invasion in case of borderline tumor. That is the differentiating feature from malignant tumors. So in pregnancy, most borderline tumors are either serous or mucinous epithelial tumors. These are usually unilocular cysts with multiple vascular mural wall, that is solid nodules or capillary projection. So unilocular cyst with multiple solid projection, this is the usual ultrasound picture. Now, how you are going to differentiate between the malignant and borderline? Okay, so usually it comes in the EMQ. So you have to see that what is the differentiating point between the malignant and borderline tumor. So whenever normal ovary, so normal ovary in ultrasound, whenever there is a cyst, so normal ovarian tissue is presented as a crescent sign. Okay, so it is a rim of normal ovarian tissue. So whenever this crescent sign is present, that means there is no invasive disease. Okay, so whenever the crescent sign is present, there will be no, it is a helpful feature that there will be no malignancy. But the crescent sign does not exclude any borderline tumors. So in case of crescent sign, you have to suspect either benign mass or borderline mass, while absence of crescent sign indicates malignancy. Now, pelvic inflammatory disease, these are rare in pregnancy. But the source of infection here, it can be either ascending infection or infection of ovarian cyst, infection of endometrioma or hydrosalpinx, or sometimes superimposed infection from adnexal torsion. Also, ovarian abscess can occur because of ART, like transvaginal oocyte retrieval or transcervical embryo transfer. So it can be also source of infection. Presentation for TO abscess, it is variable. Sometimes confined abscess, there will be only just abdominal pain, low abdominal pain, and swinging pyrexia. While ruptured abscess will give more symptoms like peritonitis, but this can be masked in pregnancy. So tubo-ovarian abscess diagnosis in pregnancy, it becomes difficult because presentation is varied, and again some sign symptoms will be masked. On ultrasound, this TO abscess is usually presented as thick wall, ill-defined, multiloculated solid lesion, cystic or solid lesion. Usually this acute PID, it is managed in the same way that like in non-pregnant. That is, you have to admit the patient, you have to start her on IV antibiotics. But doxycycline or tetracycline, it is contraindicated beyond 15th week of gestation. Now see, this was a recall question and the source of that recall question was here in this talk. Okay, so tetracycline or doxycycline, it is contraindicated beyond 15th week because it causes bone and tooth discoloration and inhibits bone growth. But first trimester use of tetracycline is not associated with increased risk of congenital malformation. So this was a recall question. So doxycycline is associated with all except what they have given, and they have given this specifically. And we are not aware of this thing. We think that tetracycline or doxycycline is contraindicated in whole of the pregnancy. So this is the basic thing that in first trimester, doxycycline or tetracycline use is not associated with increased risk of congenital malformation. Remember this well. Now, hydrosalpinx, it is usually presented as a thin walled tubular structure containing anechoic fluid. The sign, classical sign is beads on string sign, which is represents endosalpingeal folds. It is usually readily distinguished from pelvic veins and bowels by visualizing the color flow. Okay. Then appendiceal mass. So acute appendicitis is again a common condition in pregnancy, 1 in 1500 pregnancy. It is the most, appendicectomy is the most common non-obstetric procedure in pregnant women. What happens to the appendix in pregnancy? Appendicitis in pregnancy, it is difficult to diagnose because this appendix keeps on changing the position. So it is in the right iliac fossa during first trimester, moves to pelvic brim during second trimester, and reaches lower right upper quadrant in third trimester. So definitely the signs and symptoms will be very different to that of non-pregnant woman, and the site of pain also varies. So which can result in delayed diagnosis. So which also increases the incidence of perforation and increase maternal and fetal morbidity. So there are two talks on this appendicitis in pregnancy and acute abdominal pain in pregnancy. I have already discussed those talks before this, and the recording is there in YouTube. So please go through that once, because this appendix in pregnancy is also important talk. This appendiceal mass is usually caused by wall of appendiceal perforation, and it represents pathological spectrum ranging from phlegmon to abscess. Okay, so usually outside the pregnancy, appendiceal mass is usually 2 to 6% of patients, but the incidence is somewhat higher. They have not quoted the incidence in pregnant women, but it is higher because of delayed diagnosis. Now, how you're going to assess this adnexal masses, how you're going to diagnose this adnexal masses in pregnancy. So first and foremost investigation will be routine ultrasound, grayscale ultrasound. So no 3D, no color Doppler, but the first investigation is, first imaging modality will be grayscale ultrasound. Is the first line imaging tool. It is usually adequate for characterization of ovarian masses and assessment of tumor size. It is as accurate as CT and MRI for diagnosis of ovarian cancer. So sensitivity of this ultrasound is around 86 to 95%, while specificity is in the range of 68 to 90%. Factors suggestive of malignancy on ultrasound are presence of solid components, papillary projection more than 6 millimeter, high colored score of blood flow within the papillary projections, increased size of mass during pregnancy, that is increase in size by 20% on subsequent scans, presence of septations and free fluid extending beyond pouch of Doppler, that means presence of ascites. So all these features suggestive of malignancy. And most important thing that you have to remember is, first you have to determine whether the mass is ovarian or extra-ovarian, because most of the extra-ovarian masses, these are benign. So ovarian masses, so you have to first see whether it is ovarian or extra-ovarian. Extra-ovarian means most of the time you are confident that it is benign. If it is ovarian, then you have to differentiate between benign and malignant masses. Color Doppler is important to actually see, differentiate between the benign and malignant according to the IOTA group. Okay, so because IOTA recommends this to divide this benign rule and malignant rule. So no blood flow, that means benign, And strong blood flow is a malignant feature, while in between blood flow, these are indeterminate. So usually morphological features plus color flow, it allows more accurate initial characterization of mass between benign and malignant with sensitivity of 86% and specificity of 91%. So whenever you combine this ultrasound plus Doppler, routine ultrasound plus Doppler, it improves sensitivity and specificity. But it is about non-pregnant patient. What happens in pregnancy? Because there is always decreased vascular resistance is seen in pregnancy, and usually this decreased resistance, which is usually attributed as malignant feature, it is a common feature in pregnancy because of increased ovarian blood flow. So it can be again confusing whether to decide it as malignant or benign. Now MRI and CT scan. So MRI is useful to whenever ultrasound shows it as a indeterminate mass or any complex cyst which is difficult to differentiate on ultrasound. So in that case, MRI will be useful. Also, it is better to characterize tissue composition like endometriomas or fat content in case of dermoid cyst, and also to assess other organ metastasis. In pregnancy, MRI is preferable to CT because it avoids radiation exposure. So in pregnancy, first line will be ultrasound followed by MRI, but not CT. But yes, CT will be useful where it is to assess the thoracic metastasis, and it can be done in pregnancy with abdominal shielding. That you should remember. So CT scan chest you can do whenever you are suspecting any thoracic metastasis. Now regarding tumor markers, when you think of CA125, so CA125 it is also produced in pregnancy by decidual cells. So again, interpretation will be difficult. So you have to take a higher cutoff level. So higher cutoff level of 112. So 112, yes. Okay. So CA125, you have to take a higher cutoff level at around 112 units between 11 to 14 weeks of pregnancy, because there will be, it is also secreted by decidual cell. So in pregnancy, still you can evaluate this CA125 because it is grossly elevated in case of malignancy. Okay. So whenever there is indeterminate or suspicious malignancy, then you can do the CA125 because it is a grossly elevated in case of pregnancy, that is advanced, sorry, not pregnancy, but advanced malignancy. Also, in case of non-ovarian cancer, it is also useful for monitoring the treatment to see for any recurrence, okay, in case of non-ovarian cancers. Other tumor markers, when you consider other tumor markers, one is LDH. So LDH, these are elevated in case of dysgerminoma. Pregnancy does not have any effect on LDH, so it remains a useful tumor marker. LDH is a useful tumor marker for germ cell tumors. AFP, alpha fetoprotein and SCG, these are usually raised and altered by pregnancy. So AFP and SCG should not be used as a tumor marker. Also, risk of malignancy index, RMI1, it is also of limited value in pregnancy because CA125 is normally elevated. So RMI1 is not used to differentiate the lesions between benign and malignant. So now coming to the management plan. So first you have to remember that 76% of masses, they are usually simple ovarian cysts which are less than 5 centimeter. So these are usually functional cysts. They resolve by 16 weeks of gestation and they require no follow-up. So remember, simple cysts less than 5 centimeter, they require no follow-up. Even no repeat scan is also not required in those cases. Now, if you find any complex cyst or cyst more than 6 centimeter, any simple cyst more than 6 centimeter, more than 5 centimeter, or any complex cyst, usually a follow-up ultrasound should be done at 14 to 16 weeks of gestation. So you should not do a surgery before 14 to 16 weeks of gestation. Now at 14 to 16 weeks, if you do the surgery, you have to do the ultrasound and then characterize the cyst as a benign. First, you have to see whether it is still present or not, and then again you have to characterize it as benign or malignant. So this intervention, it should be delayed until 14 to 16 weeks. First, because mostly they will resolve spontaneously, and you will avoid removing the corpus luteal cyst, which will also result in abortion. Then after 16 weeks also, if there are cyst is persisting, but if it is a simple cyst, they have low risk of malignancy and they should be managed conservatively. So even at 14 to 16 weeks of gestation, even if the cyst is present, if the patient is asymptomatic and the cyst is not seems to be malignant, then it will be a conservative management. Now, complex adnexal masses, which usually on ultrasound you think that it is benign, like dermoid cyst or endometrioma, again you can manage it conservatively if the patient is asymptomatic. But here you have to tell the patient that if it is a big cyst, you have to tell the patient that there is risk of torsion in pregnancy and the surgery may be required in some cases. So you have to make aware that patient that maybe surgery might be required if ovarian accident occurs, like torsion or rupture. So indications for surgery for adnexal masses in pregnancy is acute abdomen, like any accident like torsion, rupture or hemorrhage, mass which is suspicious for malignancy, rapidly growing mass, that is more than 20% increase in size. So these are big. Why? Because these are at higher risk of malignancy. So you have to evaluate by surgery. Cyst greater than 10 centimeter. So very large masses which may cause obstruction to labor. So it should be also removed. Now, in case of suspected ovarian torsion in pregnancy, so incidence of ovarian torsion in pregnancy is about 1 to 5 in 10,000 pregnancies. And it can be as high as 16% in women with OHHS. It can occur in any time in pregnancy, but more common in first and early second trimester. And remember that torsion can occur without any cyst or any mass also. So torsion of normal ovary can also occur in pregnancy. And it is the most commonly diagnosed by only clinical features. And in clinical features, acute abdominal pain is the most common symptom. Again, nausea and vomiting may be present in 85% of cases, but it can be missed as a normal symptom of pregnancy. But usually the pregnant woman, because they are very much scared of their pregnancy, so they will usually present early than in non-pregnant woman with pain in abdomen. And also in pregnancy, chances of recurrent torsion are 2 times more as that of non-pregnant woman. So recurrent torsion is also more in case of pregnancy. Now on ultrasound, it is an enlarged edematous ovary with peripherally arranged follicles. So ultrasound presentation is enlarged edematous ovary with peripherally arranged follicles and twisted vascular pellicle, which is also known as Whirlpool sign. So Whirlpool sign is for torsion ovary. Presence of blood flow within the ovary, it does not exclude the diagnosis, okay, because complete loss of blood flow is usually a late sign in case of torsion. So clinical assessment and high index of suspicion should be done. Once the diagnosis is made, surgery should be immediately done. Ideal management is laparoscopy with adnexal detorsion, okay, and aspiration of ovarian cyst or ovarian cystectomy or salpingo-oophorectomy. So now first choice is always detorsion only. Just detorsion, do laparoscopy, do the detortion and see, okay. But in case of obvious necrosis, when there is no revascularization after detortion, unilateral salpingo-oophorectomy is required. But according to new talk on ovarian torsion, remember well, always the first management is detorsion. You should not do salpingo-oophorectomy or removal of adnexa in case of torsion. Now, when you are suspecting a malignant disease, so usually the malignancy in pregnancy, these are usually borderline malignant tumors or early stage, okay, like stage 1A. What are the most common malignancies? It is the germ cell tumor, that is non-epithelial tumor. So germ cell tumor or sex cord tumors, and also early stage epithelial ovarian cancer. So usually whenever you suspect malignancy, you have to take MDT opinion. You have to see which test should be done, that is whether MRI or CT scan should be done, to plan the management, and the management will depend upon the woman's age, gestational age, parity, desire for fertility, and most importantly, the management will depend upon stage of the disease. So in first trimester of pregnancy, if the patient presents with malignancy, the thorough discussion should be done regarding the risk of miscarriage and option of termination of pregnancy. So usually in case of advanced disease, it is the termination of pregnancy and do the debulking surgery. But in case of late second or third trimester, you can do early delivery by cesarean section after the course of steroids and then staging laparotomy in the same setting. But sometimes you can just give some chemotherapy in second and third trimester. Like if you find any mass, you can do the cystectomy and give her chemotherapy. So the primary surgery, if you want to do in between pregnancy, it will be unilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and surgical staging. So it is unilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, a cytology, omentectomy, peritoneal biopsy, and appendicectomy in case of mucinous tumor. So this is the usually performed surgery in case of pregnancy. And after the pregnancy, usually restaging should be done by CT imaging and laparoscopic assessment after the delivery. Okay, because extra ovarian disease may not have been adequately assessed during pregnancy surgery. So basically the surgery in pregnancy, it is limited to the ovarian unilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and other staging modalities. Okay, but it is not a uterus removal. So it will be done by a second stage surgery afterwards. Now surgical approach in pregnancy. So laparoscopy is safe in pregnancy. Pneumoperitoneum, it does not modify human uteroplacental flow. There is no difference in IUGR or stillbirth rates between laparoscopy and laparotomy. But for laparoscopy, alternative entry techniques like Hussen's or Palmer should be considered, where the surgery is performed in second trimester because direct injury by Veress needle can occur. So Hussen's or Palmer's entry point should be considered in case of second trimester laparoscopy. Whenever there is any suspicion of malignancy, better to do laparotomy to avoid cyst rupture, tumor cell dissemination, and port site metastasis. So whenever there is suspicion of malignancy, you should do laparotomy. If a patient requires laparotomy, site of incision depends upon the gestational age. So suprapubic transverse incision in case of early gestation or lower midline incision, to lower or upper midline or paramidline incision in case of later pregnancy. Also, if the laparotomy is planned in third trimester, better to do cesarean section delivery at the same time. So again, finally, this is the flow chart which is important here. So see, whenever you see any adnexal mass, first, if it is acute abdomen, then there is nothing. If you find any torsion or hemorrhage, you are going to do the surgery. If the mass is asymptomatic, just diagnosed on the ultrasound, then you have to characterize it between benign, indeterminate, or malignant. So in case of benign cyst, simple cyst less than 5 centimeter, even no further scan also is required. Simple cyst less than 5 centimeters, no further action. It is important. Simple cyst more than 5 centimeters or complex, you are going to do the rescan at 14 to 16 weeks of gestation. Okay. So at 14 to 16 weeks of gestation or 4 to 6 later after the diagnosis. Here, if you see resolution of mass, no need of further action, no change in size, again, no need to do. If it is benign, you have to just manage it conservatively and do the rescan 6 weeks postnatally. Okay, in case of benign masses. Now, if the scan is suggestive, ultrasound is suggestive of indeterminate mass or suspicious malignant mass, then you have to evaluate the mass further by either MRI or tumor markers. You have to take MDET opinion. If there is low index of suspicion, then follow up with rescanning. If there is high index of suspicion of malignancy, then surgery is the option. So, am I clear regarding this management of adnexal masses?
Ma'am,
Yes.
the simple cyst more than 5 centimeters and the complex one, ma'am, it has to be rescanned at 4 to 6 weeks or 14 to 16 weeks of gestation, right?
Yeah. See, if it is diagnosed in first trimester, then you have to do at 14 to 16 weeks. Okay. If you have diagnosed it at later age, okay, like if you have first diagnosed it at 12 weeks or 14 weeks, then better to do rescan at 4 to 6 weeks later. Got it?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the questions, strategy questions for this talk. Just type your answers in the chat box. Okay, so the corpus luteum produces progesterone to support early pregnancy. By when the corpus luteum is expected to regress? Yes, very good. Answer is 8 weeks. B. See, follicular cyst or other simple cysts, they resolve by 16 weeks, okay? But corpus luteum, it regresses by 8 weeks. Next one, what is the most common adnexal cystic lesion diagnosed after 16 weeks of gestation? After 16 weeks. Yeah, it is dermoid cyst or macrocystic teratoma. Answer is E. So, thank
Ma'am,
you.
what
Yes,
is
yes.
ma'am what is the commonest cyst before 16 weeks?
Before 16 weeks, they have not given the exact which is one, whether it is a corpus luteum or follicular cyst. Okay, they have not mentioned anything before 16 weeks. We can't tell what is. I think they will not ask you also before 16 weeks. So yes, it can be, but
Okay,
usually
thank you.
follicular cyst or corpus luteum. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, tomorrow we will have another discussion. Till then, bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.